Good morning, all. I'm Tabitha Hassell with Tabs on Tap. I swear I wasn't going to play any more of those videos because I get in trouble. but that's an official ICE video. It doesn't have any words. Hopefully, they won't zing me over that. Usually, it's people put these videos together, which I love, but they always have songs and words and different things that these copyrighted programs pick up. And they don't like that at all. Even though I don't make a single penny off the show, I'm not earning any money off of anybody's copyrighted music, but they do not like it when I play it. Lots to talk about today. I don't know what is going on with my system and why I keep running so late, but I'm here, I'm on time, and then I press the button. And when I press the button, it says, what does it say? It's like the little thing spins and it's just like waiting. So then I open another window and it's spinning and I'm trying to like when you first start your streaming software in the morning, you have to join the show. And everything works fine until I get into that join the show. And yesterday it was kind of lagging. Today it was really lagging. So I guess I'm gonna have to call the company. Good morning, Robert. And like I said, next week I'm not gonna have a show next week. It's gonna be my vacation week. I don't have any anti-piracy work, but I've got a lot of other work. All the studios are closed for the holidays, so I will not be out performing any anti-piracy. Not that that should give anybody any reason to go out and pirate movies, of course, but I am going to be very busy with a lot of other things, a lot of tying up loose ends and giving myself a little bit of a rest, which I desperately do need. But one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to have to reach out to the streaming software and ask what in the world is going on. I also need to fix my camera. I think I must have bumped it last night. I was wrapping gifts yesterday, like right behind the camera, and I probably bumped something. Good morning, Sherry, because I see my flags. My flag's a little bit off today, but that's okay. You know what? We have some good stuff to talk about today. There's a lot to talk about. I'm not, I hear lately, I haven't been very excited to talk about politics, but there's some new things going on that I'm kind of excited to talk about. One, we formed, and you probably already heard this multi-agency task force, strike force to combat animal abuse, which I love. Going after, of course, puppy mills, dog fighting, animal testing. That's been in the news already. Nothing too new there, but we do have some new things to talk about that maybe you haven't heard. Drew says Donald Trump got caught lying about being on the Epstein plane at least 8 times with a 20-year-old. They just released 30,000 more documents. Drew, I have looked through just about everything. And as of right now, I have not seen anything at all that ties Donald Trump to being on the airplane or to trafficking anyone or sexually abusing anyone. Nothing at all. There's a couple documents released, which I was kind of, I guess, surprised that were released, but I guess they're part of the files where they said, oh, this information was sent out after Epstein had died. And, they're trying to analyze it to see if it's Epstein's writing. But, one of them was almost like kind of a suicide goodbye, letter to someone. And Drew, what I'm seeing is a lot of ties to people like Bill Gates, Bill Clinton, which of course Bill Clinton came out with a statement and had said he said he wants full transparency. He wants everything to be revealed. Assuming he probably knows that they've already taken out anything pointing to him. But here's the thing, Drew. If there was any true information in the files in which Donald Trump was guilty of doing anything, I can guarantee you his team would have removed it so you wouldn't be seeing it. So anything that you're seeing is not going to lead to Donald Trump. There's a lot of documents in there. They said, well, we can't prove these are true, can't prove there's not true. One of the documents in the Epstein files, though, there was two notable things. And one of those would be that the FBI did attempt at least to investigate 10 co-conspirators. Now, why some names are redacted and other names are not redacted, I don't understand. But I think you would pronounce it John Luc Brunel. Is that how you pronounce his name? And very well known associate of Jeffrey Epstein's. His name is loud and clear as one of those 10 potential co-conspirators. We have Wexner, of course, with Victoria's Secret, also a very well-known connection of Epstein, who was also listed as one of those potential 10 co-conspirators. All of the other names were blacked out. And Drew, to your point, what I can tell you right now, and I've said it on the show before, everything that Epstein was doing was all lined out long before the case ever began. A woman, a very liberal woman named Julie Brown, wrote a book called Pervasion of Justice. And that book was broken down into segments and released by the Miami Herald several years ago. Unredacted, lots of names mentioned. If there's anything you want to know about the Epstein file, all you have to do is go back and read the Pervasion of Justice book. It's an actual book written very, with a lot of bias, by the way, a lot of bias, but all the names are there, all the people are there. Anything you want to know is there. That's not the question. We know who the people are, don't we? We know all these names. We want to know why none of them are being held accountable. And I'll tell you, if we find out without doubt that Donald Trump also took part in the abuse of and trafficking of minors, of women, then guess what? He should absolutely be held accountable. If he is part of this group of the 10 co-conspirators, if they have any proof that he did anything wrong, then he should absolutely be held accountable, just like anyone else would. He's also not above the law. And Robert says, conservative infighting, Kirk Owens, Carlson, Shapiro, Kelly will be the excuse the Uniparty uses to let the Dems win the midterms and then let impeachments begin once again. But here's the thing, Robert, do any of those people matter? Charlie Kirk, of course, we loved him. He's gone. Candace Owens has probably lost her mind. Tucker Carlson, I'm still following Tucker Carlson. I don't watch his show. I don't watch anyone's show, but I still see some of the comments he makes and some of the video clips, here and there. I'm still on board with Tucker Carlson. My mind about him has not changed at all. In fact, I agree with him about pretty much everything he says. Shapiro, I've never listened to Shapiro. I've never listened to Megyn Kelly. I don't have any clue what they're talking about. But in the end, do any of those people really matter? They're just people. They're just out there researching and talking. They're podcasters, show hosts. None of those people matter. I hope that wouldn't lead to anyone losing any midterms. And let's see here. And I've seen a comment, Jay, you were absolutely right. Under Biden, they would have thrown everyone under the bus had there been anything incriminating towards Trump. I couldn't agree with you more. But people protect each other. Will Trump protect Bill Clinton in order to protect himself? Possibly. Possibly. Did Donald Trump do something he shouldn't have done? I don't think so. I really do not think so. But I wonder, like anyone else, there was some things that seemed incriminating against him. For one, Elon Musk. If you remember when they had their first little spat and Elon Musk left the White House, he made a post. He later deleted it, but it said I still have it. I still have the post, and Elon Musk said, "Hey, the reason why these files, the Epstein files, haven't released is because Trump's in them." Now, did he mean because Trump actually did something wrong or just because his name is in them? Then Donald Trump made a statement and he stated that, yeah, I know, my name's in the files. Of course it is. We knew each other. Palm Beach is a small area, which it is. And he said that he knows the reason why he's kept these files from being out in the public is because he knows that it will be twisted and turned and it will go against him even though he didn't do anything wrong. And that's why he called it a hoax, is because he knew that his name is in the files. And I've said that before. His name is definitely in the files because they knew each other. And not only did they know each other, but, I would say they were associates at one point. That doesn't mean that Donald Trump participated in the trafficking of women, because I think all evidence points that he tried to stop the trafficking of women. It is legit that he kicked Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago for poaching his girls. Virginia Giuffre, if I'm saying her name right, she stated very clearly she's one of the girls that was poached, out of Mar-a-Lago to work for Jeffrey Epstein. And she even said she never saw Donald Trump at a party. He was not involved. He was never inappropriate to any of the females that worked at Mar-a-Lago. But the reason why I know Donald Trump and of course Epstein are associated in more than a capacity of just seeing each other at parties, even though I don't think he's involved, is that we know that Epstein did refer girls to Trump at one point when Trump was looking for a secretary or an assistant of some type, and they did meet together in the same office building when Trump was interviewing, a couple of these girls. And the reason why I know that is because a couple of these girls, at least one, came forward with some testimony, but none of the testimony incriminated Trump in anything. I played the testimony here on the show several weeks ago, and all the girl said was, well, I came to an interview. I didn't expect to see Donald Trump. She was actually there interviewing with Jeffrey Epstein to become his assistant or secretary. I guess I don't know if they were holding interviews together. I don't really know what the situation was, but she said she had just been out running. She was, sitting in her seat, and then Donald Trump come up. Donald Trump's what? He's like 6'4". Oh, he was looming above me. And then he told her that she was acting like a child, and of course she got mad, and and then here she comes giving some testimony, but he didn't do anything inappropriate. He didn't proposition her or say anything to her at all, outside of the fact said she was intimidated by his height. So it's just a bunch of silliness, really. It's just a bunch of silliness. But Pam Bondi said, hey, we'll absolutely go after. She said this yesterday. We'll go after anyone. If there's someone out there, if you're a victim and you want to talk about who victimized you, call us. That's what Pam Bondi said. Call us. We'll prosecute anyone. But at the same time, we know there are victims. But the problem is the victims were all paid off. What did that Virginia Gofrig, which $22 million, something along those lines? She probably received more. That's probably just what she had left, maybe at the time of her death. They received millions of dollars to not talk. So I don't think we're going to hear a lot from the victims. As a matter of fact, I don't even, I hate it. I want justice. I want accountability, but it's never going to happen. It's not going to happen. We already know who the people are. It's never going to happen. And Sherry, let's see. Juanita Broderick is a Clinton victim from decades ago. She had to sign an NDA. Exactly, Sherry. All of these female victims, when they came forward originally, they were all approached by Epstein's attorneys, and they were all given deals where, we'll pay you so much money if you don't testify. And it was done legally. There's nothing anyone can do about it. They settled, something out of court. And maybe some of them were done illegally, but most of them were done legally. And these women are not going to come forward. They're not. As a matter of fact, that you know what I'm hearing? I'm hearing that the victims are upset over the release of the files because they don't want anyone to know that they're one of the victims. They don't want anyone to zero in on them. Understandably, these people are not going to come forward. If they haven't yet, they're not going to. Good morning, Karen. Good morning, Adrian. Robert says, no, they don't matter, but it's the election excuse. Yeah. Any excuse, of course, with these elections, who knows what's going to happen when it comes to election time, because some of these folks on the left, I don't want to use the word gaining power. They're not really gaining power, but they're just willing to do things we're not willing to do. I watched a video this morning. I played that little Santa ice video. As a matter of fact, I'm going to play it again because I don't think most of you were here when I played it. I think this is kind of cute, and it kind of fits the Christmas theme. You can take a look at this here. I thought that was kind of cute. Trust me, we're going to be talking about immigration here in a moment. But the problem is I watched this video this morning, and there was an ICE facility. Where was that? It was in Columbus, Ohio, I believe. And what was so crazy is these people, they have learned how to track ICE. And they go outside the hotel where ICE is staying, and they bang drums and loud music, and they're, lighting fireworks. They're doing anything they can because they think they want to keep ICE awake all night long. Now, that's dumb, but that's what they're willing to go to that length. These people have absolutely nothing else to do. I guess none of them have jobs, or maybe George Soros is paying them to do this. I really don't know. I guess if they're getting paid by the government in state aid or whatever it is they might be getting, maybe they don't need to work. I'm not really sure what's going on. But what I do know when it comes to election time is these same people, you think they're volatile when it comes to ICE. They're going to be very volatile when it comes to these different elections, because they do not want us to win, and they will do anything they can to stop us from winning. I think when it comes to election time, it's going to get really crazy. I really do think it's going to get really crazy. If these people can be this crazy to ICE and to law enforcement, think about what they're going to do when it comes to you going to cast your vote. And I hope that we come up with a plan to keep Americans safe when you're going to cast your vote. I think a lot of Americans might be intimidated to not go, and I'm again disappointed with the Trump administration and that they're not doing something more to these people. I watched another video yesterday after the show where I don't remember where this was. I think Minneapolis, but there was a police officer there. I don't know if he was ICE or Border Patrol or just a random police officer. They didn't show much of him, but one of these protesters came up behind him and they said it was a Mountain Dew, threw a drink on him. And of course, he took off after her, a young woman, and detained her, and the people just went nuts. The people that were with her went absolutely nuts. And they were all grabbing at the officers, touching them. That's just a very dangerous situation. To me, when these people cannot control themselves, you know what? Round them up, take them to jail, charge them with sedition, whatever it is you want to do, impeding, obstruction of justice, whatever you want to come up with, put these people in jail. And every single time a new group shows up, guess what? Round them up, put them in jail. If they're acting violent. Now, if they're standing there peacefully, they're not doing anything, fine, let them go. But you know what? Just like these people in Columbus, Ohio, who were banging on drums and shooting off fireworks in the middle of the night, trying to keep ICE up. Well, they're keeping everybody else up in the hotel also. Why aren't they being picked up on disturbance of peace? I just don't get it. I just don't get it. And I think things are going to get really ugly when it comes to election time. So Robert, if there's anything that keeps people from voting or keeps Republicans out, I think it's going to be these freaking lunatics on the left who are out acting like absolute morons. It's really unbelievable to me. And every day I just shake my head like, what are these people doing? What are they doing? Pick them all up. I saw that a couple people were following ICE the other day, and I saw the ICE truck stop in the middle of traffic. They get out. Of course, these girls are recording. And the ICE guy comes up to the officer, walks up to their window and says, "You have to stop following us. If you keep following us, we're going to break your windows out. We're going to drag you out of this car and we're going to arrest you." And those girls like, "Oh my God, look how he's talking to us. He can't say these things and he can't do that." And I'm like, who are the parents of these people? Where do these kids go to school? I mean, why were they never taught that you cannot do that? You can't harass a law enforcement officer. You just can't do it. And if you do it, guess what? You're going to go to jail or worse. I would really like to know who's teaching these kids. Apparently, no one is teaching these kids. Make sure if you have, and trust me, a lot of us conservatives, I don't, my son's very conservative, but I know I have friends who are conservatives who have very liberal children. They send them off to college, and guess what? They come back a different person, and not necessarily a bad person, but certainly leaning in a different direction. And if you have one of these kids, tell your kids, don't be a moron. Don't go out there and chase after officers. Don't impede, arrests or investigations, because if you do, you're going to go to jail. You're in the wrong. We should make some kind of tutorial video, shouldn't we? And blast it out on all the. I wish that's what ICE did. We made a tutorial and blasted it out to all of these different groups and said, "You cannot do this. If you do this, you're going to get arrested." Then just start arresting them all. How about that? We'll just start arresting them all. That's what I would like to see happen. I was watching I watch a lot of videos. I don't sleep very well, as most of you know. So I'm up, this morning I woke up at 4 a.m. Yesterday I woke up at 4:30 a.m. And I'm just watching all these different videos and looking at news stories. And some of the videos I see just blow my mind. One of them was a guy walking through parts of Minneapolis, and he said, "Oh, there's a McDonald's here, and they're shielding ICE from federal authorities. So people know that they can go to this McDonald's and evade capture. And this McDonald's, what they do, and ICE is in the area, the illegals go to this McDonald's, they lock the doors, and they don't, ICE doesn't know these people are in there." So this guy was making this video to tell ICE, "Hey, guess what's going on here in our city? If you want to find out where the illegals are, go to this McDonald's. The front door's glass. You can just break it down and go in and make some arrests." And whether ICE got that video, of course, we'll never know. I saw it. Hopefully they'll see it also. And then what is it? Again with Columbus, Ohio. Columbus, Ohio. As a matter of fact, I've got it here on my phone. I wasn't planning on talking about it, but we can talk about it. Columbus, Ohio. This is how far they're willing to go. They release these statements to their citizens in Columbus, Ohio. And basically, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it says if you think you could be targeted, stay home if you can. ICE can stop cars without cause. When you're out, carry federal ID or documentation if you can. Memorize or write on your arm your emergency contact number. If you are detained, oh, my phone's ringing. If you are detained, you might not get to keep your phone. And WhatsApp access is often disabled in jail. Why do they need WhatsApp access? I must be missing something there. But I mean, this is coming from the city of Columbus, Ohio. It's really long. It talks about people, what can residents do? Check on your neighbors. All about avoiding ICE. You don't have to open the door or let them onto your private property without a judicial order, like a warrant. They might wear gear that says police on them, even though they're not Columbus police. Ask them to identify themselves. I mean, this is coming from the city of Columbus, Ohio. I would like to see the Trump administration go in and remove the entire city council who would be responsible for helping citizens evade ICE. And then it tells them, save these numbers, legal aid of Southeast and Central Ohio at 888. Then they give Community, Refugee, and Immigration Services phone number. And it said Columbus Police Department will still answer any call for service at 911. So they're trying to tell people, if you're in Columbus, Ohio, and ICE is in the area, don't open your door. Evade ICE. Call this number. They're giving them the cheat sheet how to evade ICE. And then they're telling them to call 911, which ties up the 911 system. I don't understand why this is allowed. And it's really frustrating to me. It's extremely frustrating to me. But here's some good news on the front of illegal immigration is, what? We do have a plan. I'm always talking about accountability and do we have a plan? Do we not have a plan? We have more plans than I thought we had, quite honestly. And I'm always happy when we have solutions. We have a lot of problems. We don't often have solutions. But guess what? We do have some solutions coming up. And this is kind of interesting. And in fact, two solutions. We're going to talk about withdrawal from NATO and some solutions that are going on here in a moment. But first, we're still going to finish up talking about ICE. So ICE, this is so wild to me. The Trump administration has come up with an AI-driven program to target people who are in our country illegally. And, we have been just going after people who are criminals, and that still continues. But we also are going to go after people who are here illegally because that in itself, of course, is a crime. And now Palantir, I know most of you are familiar with Palantir. Palantir has an immigration OS system that the Trump administration is going to use in conjunction with some other systems that all pull like the mapping together. And so what they're doing right now, as a matter of fact, they've already flagged 1.5 million people who are in our country illegally. But this is an AI-driven platform to be able to locate and identify people who are here in our country illegally. And then guess what? Go out and pick them up. And there's a couple of different companies involved. Palantir is one with their Palantir OS system. Then there's another one called AI Solutions 87, which I've never heard of AI Solutions 87. So the way that this system works, and it's pretty interesting. And we know that everywhere, there's cameras everywhere, right? Cameras everywhere. We have facial recognition systems all over. You may not know they're there. They're all over the place. And so what this system is going to do, and it's really revolutionary in my opinion, but the system is going to go to Palantir's OS system. The Palantir OS system can go through all of these different files, federal records. It can go through public record, and it will identify through AI people who are here in our country illegally. And that's going to be, again, through people who've been arrested for various crimes. It's going to tie those arrests and anything that's gone through the court system. It's going to tie that information with public records. So they're going to get these names of illegals through the court system nationwide. They're going to tie that with public records. You know how it is. You go online. Let's say you go to Spokeo. That's a big site a lot of people use, and you just want to see what's going on. With somebody you went to high school with. So you look their name up, and you can see all their information there for a fee. You can pay for it. You'll get their addresses, email addresses, phone numbers. Places they've lived, spouses, whatever you might want. Well, what's going to happen is this system is going to use those public records to tie to these court records. And then they're going to use the camera systems and facial recognition systems that are set up all around the country, and they're going to start looking for these people. Everybody, even people who are here illegally have some type of ID. They'll go to the DMV, they'll get a state ID. Some of them, have driver's licenses. All of that information's in the facial recognition system. All of it is. And a lot of these people who've come through the detainment center, as they're the processing center, as they're entering into the country, most illegals didn't have to run or hide. Most of them just came, right through the facility and were given plane tickets, bus tickets, and off they go. Well, they have their photo taken. So all of those photos are also in the facial recognition system. So they're going to be able to tie all this together. They're going to be able to track people. If you're out shopping, facial recognition. A lot of stores have facial recognition. If you're driving by certain, areas of the highway or roadways, guess what? There's license plate readers, and this AI-driven data, is going to tell them what your license plate number is, for the people who have, of course, a registered car. And then they're going to go and they're going to take this information and they're going to send it to this other company called AI Solutions 87. Now, AI Solutions 87, what they do is map. And then they're going to take your location and they're going to map it out. And they're going to say, okay, this person, Rhonda Doolin, whatever her name might be, it doesn't sound like an illegal name, but you never know. So Rhonda's going to come through. She's already going to be, mapped out by the planter system. They're going to say, okay, we know who Rhonda is. Rhonda was seen in court for, shoplifting. Well, Rhonda's public records say that Rhonda lives in Columbus, Ohio. And these are the addresses she could be at. And then they're going to have license plate readers say, oh, we saw Rhonda today, over in Davenport, Iowa. She's on vacation. Maybe she moved. So then AI Solutions, what are they called? AI Solutions 87, what they're going to do is they're going to contract people to go out and find Rhonda. And they'll pay people, I've heard, anywhere from $300 to $500 or more to go out and get an illegal and bring them back in to be detained. It's really kind of a crazy system when you think about it. Sorry, my comments have been lagged. I got to go back here for just a moment. But it's great to see solutions. Great to see solutions. Sorry, my comments stopped for some reason. They're just catching back up. And let's see, Robert DJT said Hillary would go to jail. Yeah, right. I thought that in the first term. Didn't happen, did it? Good morning, Kim. Charlie said, yep. Call us so you can be Clintoned. That's right. Good morning, Nancy, and Merry Christmas to you. So I think these are some good things going on. We're coming up with solutions. The Trump administration allegedly targeting, they've already identified another 1.5 million illegals for this new AI-driven system, the people who are going to be leaving our country. And then now they're apparently, I'm hearing, expecting to detain and remove about 3 million more people. I mean, it's really kind of crazy, isn't it? That here we are in December and Trump just took office in January, I guess the official swearing in January 20th. And look how far we've come. That's really wild. And trust me, I've got more solutions. I should have just called this the show Solution Day today. And and I know people have mixed emotions on ICE and whether a lot of these people should be deported and where they're being deported to. And we know we've heard all the talk about CBS. They were supposed to have that show where they were showing a group of men who were detained, people who were here illegally, who were detained and were sent to CCOT, which is a very violent prison in El Salvador, and filled with gang members and so on. And CBS interviewed, I think it was on 60 Minutes, a bunch of these gang members. Now, and inmates, I guess we don't know if they're necessarily gang members, but people who were here in our country illegally. And I saw the clips of it. They're like, oh, we're terrified. We're terrified. We don't want to be here. It's, we were scared we were going to get killed and all this other stuff. I get it. If you're here in our country illegally, doesn't necessarily mean you're a gang member or a criminal. Although we could debate that, I guess. And you go into this maximum security prison where they house all the gang members, you probably would be a little bit scared. But you know what? Maybe that will scare you from coming back again. But for whatever reason, CBS decided not to air it. Now, you probably already know this. And liberals are furious. They're absolutely furious. They think that Trump got to CBS. They're turning against CBS. saying CBS, is in Trump's pocket, all this other crazy stuff. I personally think it's kind of funny. And I'm glad they didn't air it because guess what? That just goes to show, and the media does. The media absolutely forms opinion. And that's why Donald Trump, I'm going to read a statement here to you just a moment about the New York Times. I couldn't agree more with Donald Trump when it comes to the New York Times. Good morning, Matthew Nickerson. Merry Christmas to you, my former neighbor. And so let's see here. I want to make sure we definitely have to talk about this. And then we're going to talk about the C5. Wait till I talk to you about the American National Security Strategy. I didn't even know what that was. You might not either, but we're going to talk about that here in just a moment. And what was I talking about? I must be losing my mind. Sorry, I saw Matt, you threw me off on my show. Anyway, I know we were talking about something. I don't remember what it was. Hopefully one of you guys remember because I do not. But I know what it was. The New York Times. I am so sorry. I am having one of those days today. We were talking about the New York Times. I saw Matt's comment and I was going to look for Trump's statement when it comes to the New York Times, which is pretty crazy. This is what he said. And you probably already saw this. He said the failing New York Times and their lies and purposeful misrepresentations is a serious threat to national security of our nation. Their radical left, unhinged behavior, writing fake articles and opinions in a never-ending way must be dealt with and stopped. They are a true enemy of the people. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President DJT. He couldn't be more right on that. Could not be more right. Because I'll tell you, I think we all know what's behind the division in this country. What's behind the hate in this country? It is the media, right? It is absolutely the media. How many times have we all said over the years, if you want to stop the brainwashing, turn the TV off. I don't have time to go on social media and go to all of these different liberal posts. I wish I did have time because I see so many posts out there. And I'm like, where do you people come up with this stuff? Where do you come up with it? I see so many lies and so much manipulation and so much propaganda out there. And there are some liberal sites who absolutely should be shut down. And when it comes to the media and you have the writing like we see at the New York Times, what does that do? It just creates hate. It creates fear. It creates division. And I don't think there's anything we can do to shut the New York Times down. I wouldn't want to shut the New York Times down, quite honestly, because that sets a very slippery slope, as we know, and it sets a precedent that when things turn around, and trust me, they will turn around at some point, there will be another Democrat back in office because they're going to make sure that happens. And it's probably going to be a socialist. It's probably going to be somebody who, of course, is going to reverse everything that Trump has done. So we want to be very careful because if we set the precedent that we're going to take out, certain types of media just because we don't like what they say or because they're lying, maybe they should just be rebranded as not journalists, but then they're going to do it to us. So we've got to be very careful, of course, with that precedent. But I was listening to Ben Carson. I love Ben Carson. I absolutely love the guy. I know some of you might have mixed thoughts on him. I think we all loved him at one point. Some people then thought he kind of turned against Donald Trump. I don't know that I agree with that. I think that he has always been there for Donald Trump, but he is pushing for media reform to make sure that journalists are accountable and actually speaking the truth. Now, of course, the truth is subjective, so it's really tough to say and tough to police media when it comes to the truth being so subjective. And I don't know that we'll ever go back to a day of like the Walter Cronkite where we just have unopinionated, unbiased news. We're all so divided. We have the conservative news channels, and then of course we have the liberal news channels. I don't watch any of them. I don't. I can't even remember the last time I watched any news on television. It's been many years. I do not watch it. I read the news, and I read it from many different sources, but you will not catch me watching the news. And in Fox National, trust me, they're no different than a New York Times, or anyone else. They're definitely not in favor of Donald Trump as much as you might think that they are. You guys know, you've heard me give that spiel before, but I want to play this little clip of Ben Carson because I love what he's saying here. And he was making a speech. This is just a clip from a bigger speech where he's talking about media reform and how we have to get back to true research, to true journalism, and we have to start reporting the truth without bias. But then he goes off and he starts talking about schools a little bit too, and I'm like, yep, this is where it all started and where it continues.
What would you do if you wanted to bring down America, you couldn't do it militarily. I think you might think about our education system. Could we possibly infiltrate the teacher unions and the public schools so that we can indoctrinate the children? Could we gain control of the media, of Hollywood, so that we could change the culture of the people? Should we do everything we can to destroy the American family?
I mean, he couldn't be more right. I mean, because that's it is the destruction of the American family, the destruction of our children's minds. No question about that. Jay says local news used to be fairly impartial, not anymore. And Matt has a fantastic point. Do we really know if it wasn't unbiased so many years ago? I talked about that on the show yesterday, Matt. You probably weren't listening to work. I'm sure you're a very busy man. You probably weren't here yesterday. But I will tell you that no, it was not all that impartial back then. There may have been some impartiality, some unbiased news reporting. But, like I talked about yesterday, which really is a great segue into my next topic, is the old Cold War propaganda. Hate Russia. Everybody needs to hate Russia. Russia is the enemy. And back in the day, that's the news that was reported. And just like I said yesterday, there has been propaganda in the media, in school textbooks, as far back as we can remember. And I remember being, a kid, and one of the classes, I hated school for the most part. I was bored out of my mind in school. And one of the classes I did like was history and sociology, where they taught us so many different things. And when I look back on those days, I'm like, how much of that was really true? Because I know now, I do think that the folks who come up with the Common Core and who come up with all of these school lessons, I think a lot of it is very biased. Some of it is rewritten, history rewritten. We know that. And I think when I was growing up, in the 80s, I think it was the same thing. I think there was a lot of history lessons rewritten to show a certain narrative. And when I was a kid, we were always taught Russia's communist, Russia's a terrible country. The people there suffer, they hate living in Russia. And it was just so much propaganda. Now, here I am an adult, and I can look back and I can say, okay, I can reason. Liberals, for whatever reason, think with emotion. They don't think with common sense. And so therefore they hate Russia. A lot of conservatives hate Russia because even though we are conservatives, I would think that a lot of us read and we try to keep up with the news. We try to fact check and true fact checking, and we try to see all sides of different subjects. Critical thinking. We're the party of course, critical thinking and not emotion. And I think a lot of us can look back now in history and say, okay, Russia is not our enemy. They're not communists. Putin has never served, as president of Russia, as long as they've been a communist country. They're actually they really do embrace what we consider our Western culture, but it's not just unique to us in the West. Russia also embraces that same culture. They're a very Christian country. They're also against illegals taking over their country. They're also against terrorism and some of the other things that we see, and against violence against their police officers. But they're absolutely brutalized across the world. Why? Because Russia is self-sufficient. They don't need us. They don't need us. They don't need Europe. They don't need us. They don't need our currency. They don't need our gold. They don't need anything we have for the most part. Now, some things they still need, which is why we're not haven't been obliterated off of the map. But here's something really interesting. You guys know me. I mean, I talk a lot about BRICS, a lot about BRICS. I talk a lot about the G7. I talk a lot about withdrawing from NATO, from the UN, all the things that Trump kind of campaigned on. And it's been very upsetting to me. As you know, we just talked about this yesterday. It's been very upsetting to me that here we are. We hear little talk here and there about, oh, we need to get rid of NATO, this and that. Well, now I hear there's actual plan. Believe it or not, there's an actual plan. I would have never thought that this day could come true, but I woke up this morning and I thought, man, I have been so bored talking about the news lately. Like I said the other day on one of my Facebook posts, I'm like, maybe we should just start talking about aliens and weird phenomena, because I'm so tired of politics, because we don't get anywhere, but we are getting somewhere. I didn't even know this was a thing. It's called the America National Security Strategy. Have you heard about this? Definitely look it up. Do your research. I know you guys are good at researching. America National Security Strategy. Not easy to find information on it intentionally. It's supposed to be that way because we know if it gets into the right hands, they're just going to tear this apart and they're going to go after Donald Trump. But what's interesting is Europe became aware of this plan, and it's kind of funny. But Dmitry Medvedev, who is Putin's right hand man, of course, he made a post about this, and I thought it was kind of interesting. He calls Macron, of course, from France's I don't know, was he president, prime minister? And he calls him Micron. And I think it's the funniest thing on the planet that he refers to him as Micron. And Dmitry Medvedev made a statement and he said, when Micron found out about the American national security strategy, he probably had to do a lot of double thinking about where are we heading as a country and how are we going to get by without America being our best buddy. He's going to have to figure it out. Obviously, you know what G7 is, of course, you know what the European Union is, the EU. Well, now there's a thing that Donald Trump is working on called the C5. Have you heard about the C5? News to me, that's for sure. It's called the Core 5, the C5. And I have spent so much time thinking about, and we just talked about this on the show yesterday, that what do we do? I don't want to be part of NATO. I don't want to be part of this G7. We're not allies of the UK or Ireland or Germany or so many of those European countries. They're not our friends. They hate Donald Trump. They hate him. France hates Donald Trump. Italy, we can keep Italy. I like Italy, but the rest of these countries they can't stand us, and they want us to become what they are now, which is just a complete cesspool, as you probably already know. I just watched a video this morning about what was it? I don't know, 1,000 illegals that landed on there in a boat, pulled right up to the dock, got out. Those people will live there for eternity unless they can find a way to come here. And they said, I think 44,000 illegals have entered their country, in the past so many months, and they're perfectly fine with it. They don't care that their country's being invaded. They just don't care. And they want us to not care too. They are not our friends. So I'm always thinking, well, we can't, and I know many of you have preached this to me, that we can't be an isolationist. We can't win being on an island alone. We have to have allies. And yesterday I was kind of going back and forth. I don't like to say that we should join BRICS because I know that just sounds bad, even though I would be all for it. And we don't want to join. It would be hard for us to join BRICS because then we would be joining a BRICS that's already established, where the power has already been established, and we'd kind of be the low person on the totem pole. So I kind of know that's not the best idea. And it's kind of funny because last night, I know this sounds crazy and it just goes to how crazy I can be at times. I kid you not, had like 30 minutes and I was thinking about all this and I even wrote it down on a piece of paper. I'm like, how could we change BRICS to where the United States could be part of BRICS? I'm like, would it be hyphen BRICS? BRICS, U, add a U at the end for the United States, or an A for America. All these thoughts were going through my head. Why I think about these things, I don't know, but I do. And then I read this, and I'm like, holy cow, they've already figured it out. As usual, Donald Trump's way ahead of us with the Core 5. Think about this. The Core 5. Forget BRICS. BRICS will be a thing of the past. Forget NATO. NATO can't survive without us. The Core 5, the United States, Japan, China, India, Russia. What do you think about that? Instead of that big power struggle between BRICS and NATO, how about we just wipe the slate clean, like we're always saying we need to do, and come up with the Core 5? Well, this is Donald Trump's plan, believe it or not. He has not failed us as much as I was worried that he was failing us when it comes to these issues. Look up the America National Security Strategy. Look up the Core 5, United States, Japan, China, India, Russia, the new superpower. This is Donald Trump's plan. This is the goal of the Trump administration, is to establish the Core 5. We've got 3 years to do this, but I'm going to tell you, if Donald Trump legitimately wants to go to this Core 5, and it's not just an idea, that's passed through his head. Obviously, it's written into, the plan, the future plan for America. It must be a very serious issue to Donald Trump and his administration. If this is true, it won't be an easy transition by any means. But here's what's interesting about it. Europe knows. They know. So now they know what our plan is. They know what Donald Trump plan is. Now, where do we go from here? And I also want to point out there's no I. Israel is not included. India is included, but no I for Israel. So I'm not sure how well that's going to go over with Netanyahu, but this will not be an easy transition. Robert says joining BRICS would mean we lose the reserve currency status. Good morning, Michelle. And Robert says, let's see, I figure the USA, Russia, China will cut a deal between themselves and rule 1/3 each. That could be the case. I think they're including India here. They're including Japan. I feel like, they have to because India, Japan, they have resources we could all use and need. And think about it more along the line of it will soften the blow a little bit to include Japan and India. But there's no easy way this transition is going to take place. But I'm thrilled to death to know that there is a plan. There is a plan. We're not alone in our thinking and that we need to get away from NATO. There is a plan in place. And I'm going to be talking more about this on other days. I've got a lot more research to do there, and it's a big plan. It's not, clearly not just one thing. And I was kind of reading through some of the details of the plan and how that transition is going to take place. And it was pretty interesting, quite honestly. It's not easy to find, the information on it. And so that's why we're going to talk about it a little bit more. But what a great plan that is, the C5, Core 5. We have to. We don't have a choice. If we don't do something different, we're going to cease to exist in the way we know ourselves as having been. And you know what? If you listen to me over the past several years, I've talked a lot about, my co-hosts in the past used to give me a really hard time over it, but I've talked a lot in the past about how we, the United States, just like the Ottoman Empire, like so many of these big empires that have come and gone, we have reached greatness and now we're falling. And faster than ever, of course, under a Biden administration, but we're falling and we've got to build that back up. But we can't do that. I don't know why people don't understand. We cannot build ourselves back up without the help of Russia and China. We just can't do it. They have what we need, and whether that's in BRICS, which I could not figure out how it would work with us joining BRICS. But if we form a whole entirely new union, there's the answer, right? We always have all these problems. Maybe now we have some answers. And Robert says, Bible, 10 kings become 3. Very interesting, Robert. Or maybe 10 kings become 5. Then we'll work our way down to 3. One way or the other. Linda, Merry Christmas to you, Linda. And no time to comment. Well, that's all right, Linda. Just happy you're listening to us today. I am thrilled to death over this plan. And like I said, we're going to talk about it more. I don't want to bore you with it all today. But I think what a great idea, because, if we continue this partnership with the UK, with France, with Germany, with the G7 folks, it's going to get us nowhere. These are all bankrupt countries. These countries, as a matter of fact, what's going to end up happening there is they're going to be forced into dictatorships. That's what's going to happen. They're going to bankrupt themselves. They will no longer have a parliament. It's going to be a very bad situation for these countries. And we have to distance ourselves from that disaster that they have created. And they want us to do it here. They want us to do everything they're doing there. They want us to do it here. And why they want to destroy themselves, I'll never know. It's a question. I come up with a lot of questions and a lot of answers, but that is the one answer I just can't seem to figure out is why they want to destroy us, other than, which is going to lead us to our next subject, that they just want to dumb us down. They just want us to be worker bees, and they don't want to give us the opportunity to think outside of the box. They want us to get up, go to work every day, feel like we're living a normal life, but yet we're really not. and this next topic I'm going to talk about, if Matt's still listening, he won't be able to talk about it, but he'll probably know exactly what I mean. And let's see here. I'm just trying to find, sorry, I'm a mess today, aren't I? I've got notes everywhere, things everywhere. And speaking of dumbing us down, we've talked here about the H-1B visa program, where it's supposed to bring over people into the country who have skills that Americans just don't have. Like I've said many times before, I've worked in IT recruiting, and there's not a lot of Americans who have certain types of skills that allow them to program computers, develop systems and different things like that. And so we have to bring people over on the H-1B visa program. The problem was, and the reason why the Trump administration has a problem with that program, is they're bringing people over to work at 7-Eleven and McDonald's, on an H-1B visa. That's not how the program was intended, but that's what they're doing. So they're doing right in making those cuts. But here's some facts that I came across that I thought were so interesting. And I'm going to be very careful how I phrase this, very careful. And that is that I worry sometimes, and I've talked about this before, that I worry sometimes that we have a lot of professions that are very critical to our infrastructure, very critical to our society. Medical professionals, doctors, nurses, radiologists, we have people who uh, bankers, people work in the financial industry. Well, what's happening is, let's say that as and I think there's some intent behind this. You may not see the intent that I see, but I have talked about this before. We worry about terrorism and what's going to happen in our country when the terrorists, attack us or do this and that. We talk about being invaded from within, but then we have all of these different professions that I don't want to use the word invasion because I don't think it's an invasion. I have several doctors who have come to this country from other places. I have one doctor that came from Syria. I have one that came from India. I have another one that came from, I think, Pakistan. And I absolutely love these doctors. As a matter of fact, my cardiologist is probably one of the most fantastic human beings on earth, and he came from Syria. I don't have an issue with that because they're good people. But then we start talking about Islam and how Islam is coming into a lot of these very critical professions in our country. And are they bringing with them their viewpoints? So let's say if you're a Muslim doctor and you're ultra conservative Muslim doctor, you're against drinking, you're against smoking, you're against listening to music, you're against all of these things. But then you're treating a patient who's an alcoholic, who may have done drugs, who definitely does not live a clean lifestyle, in your opinion, you see them as dirt, right? The dirt on your feet. You see them as something other than a good person, an infidel, whatever it is you might want to call somebody. Are you going to give them the same level of care as you would someone else? Here is this person standing in front of you, and they're everything you are against, but yet they need your help. They need to be treated, but you don't think their life is worth saving because, in your opinion, this type of person shouldn't even exist at all. And they wouldn't, of course, in your home country. Something would have already happened to them. They'd be in prison, they'd be beheaded, they've been stoned to death, whatever you have. Or let's say a female comes in and she's not married, she's pregnant, maybe this is her third kid, no dad around. Are you going to treat her in the same respect you're going to treat another patient who is ultra conservative, who is, your ideal of what a person should be? And I'm not saying doctors aren't going to treat people the way they should. Mine are fantastic, and I do have one doctor who is absolutely ultra conservative Muslim, and they treat me wonderfully. I'm not saying that that's not going to happen, but at the same time, as things become more radical, are you going to receive the same type of health care? But you better hope so. You better hope so. 'Cause I'm going to talk about these statistics here in just a moment. Joe said, I read somewhere that there are 126 recognized countries in the world. Since the dismantling of USAID, we are still, or USAID to some people, we are still sending money to like 100 other countries. We need to focus on America first. You're right, Joe. I'll touch base on that in a few minutes, but I talked about that on the show the other day. And let's see here. I just double checked my numbers. There are 195 recognized countries, and we are sending US tax dollars to 180. We're going to talk about that. Now, here's something that I thought was interesting. This is, a study that was done, and it goes to show a sharp decline in white men working in various what we call elite professions. And the people who are coming in to take their place are from other countries with different values in some instances. So think about this. And we know, it would be a longer show than we have today to talk about why this is happening, but I do think it's part of the intended decline in America. What NATO, what these European, what the deep state, the cabal, whatever you want to call them, this is how they want things to be. They want to push the white man down. You've known that for a long time, and that shouldn't surprise you. So this is new information. It's a decline in white men across various elite fields. So think about this. Medical students have dropped this is between 2014 to 2025. They've dropped from 31%. Now, back in 2014, white male medical students were only 31% of the total number of medical students, but that has dropped down to 20%. So from 31% to 20%. I thought 31% was pretty low to begin with. Law school graduates, white men, fell from 31% to 25%. And they're also talking about the creative fields. TV writers went from 48% to under 12%. So I think you know why I don't watch TV anymore. It's from 31% down to 12%. So the Atlantic's editorial staff, if you are familiar with the Atlantic, which is a publication on the East Coast, which is kind of interesting. Their former publisher is somebody I know who I worked for a little while, who is also quite liberal but a very good guy. So the Atlantic's editorial staff shifted from 53% white male and 89%, let's see here. Oh, I see. Let me restate that. 53% male of all colors, and 89% of them were white, to 36% total male and only 66% white, while white men now hold only 18% of tenure track humanities positions at Harvard. Now, this didn't happen by accident. I know that DEI policies, there's part of the DEI policies, even before we called them DEI policies, of course, put people on a certain track to where people of color were able to receive scholarships or funding for school grants and different things like that. We've always known that was going on. We always know there's different subsidies for housing or different subsidies, of course, when it comes to colleges, universities, and so on. Now, but the DEI policies that have been going on in this country for so long, they do have results. They do have consequences, and these are the consequences, of course, of those various programs and why they're so dangerous to our society. It's nothing against people of color. Of course, it's not. It's nothing against people from other countries. It's just a matter of the fact that this is being done to us with intent. That's what it is. It's with intent because they want Americans to not secede. They want to bring people in from other countries to take these jobs away from the white American male. I remember having a show a while back talking about reverse racism, talking about how the white American male is literally the bottom of the barrel. If you're a white man, you get nothing. you literally get nothing. You can't get state aid. You cannot, unless you're illegal, right? But the white American male doesn't get a lot of grants, doesn't get a lot of leeway when it comes to schooling and everything else. And they were the first group, of course, targeted when it came to eliminating jobs, because you can't eliminate the women first, right? Because women have more rights than men, correct? And then you have the people of color who have more rights than both men and women. And then now you have people coming into our country illegally who have more rights than everyone. And it absolutely is affecting our society. It's going to affect us to a greater degree if we continue to follow these policies. I'm having a hard time getting the words out today, but that is what I mean. And let's see. And Joe, to your point, I talked about this a little bit the other day. That I was talking a little bit about the ambassadors, American ambassadors going to different countries. So let's say that I talked about Guatemala specifically, and this is a fact. This is actually happening. We have an ambassador who is in Guatemala, and he serves the interests, of course, of the United States in Guatemala. But what's happening is we shut down all the NGOs. So we stopped giving money, let's say, to Chelsea Clinton, no more $82 million for her. We shut down that NGO. Well, Democrats, they just find another way around things. And I shouldn't say Democrats, it's Republicans and Democrats, the people who are profiting off your tax dollars. Well, what they've decided to do, instead of going through those NGOs, they're just finding other routes. They're just sending money to these other countries. Then the ambassador goes to that country and says, hey, you're getting our tax dollars. A certain percentage of that needs to come back to us. So they're still working out kickbacks. We send, let's say, just as a hypothetical example, we send a $18 billion to Guatemala. Well, our ambassador in Guatemala will tell the Guatemalan government, well, you're getting this, what did I say, $18 billion. And you wouldn't be getting that at all if it weren't for me or for us. So in order for you to get any aid from us at all, you got to shave 2 billion, off of that amount. And that 2 billion comes back and funds these certain accounts that we've set up. So they haven't stopped. Doge uncovered a lot. We knew where all of the money was going. We knew how it was being siphoned off and how it was being used. They found a way to do it legally through loopholes, but but technically, in my opinion, without moral value, that's for sure, going into all of these different funds. But it doesn't, nothing has changed. Your tax dollars is still going into the pockets of your members of Congress and into lobbyists and all of these other groups who are stealing your money to begin with. Nothing has changed. They've just found another way to do it. Just like if you're leaving your house and you're trying to go to work and they put up a big roadblock, well, guess what? Yeah, you can't go to work that way. You'll just find another way to go. And that's all they've done. It's pretty disgusting, quite honestly, what they're doing to us. And like I said, I don't understand it. It's all about the destruction of the United States. I don't understand why this is happening. I wish I knew. The only thing I can think of is they want to turn us into a communist country. I just had this conversation with a friend of mine yesterday because I moved back to Illinois. I'm not too far from Effingham, as you guys know. And he's like, why would you do that? Why would you move from Missouri to Illinois? And I said, well, for one, believe it or not, I feel safer in Illinois. B, there's more conservatives by far in Illinois than there are in Missouri. Outside of the city of Chicago, most of Illinois is actually very conservative and very much Trump country for sure across Illinois. Here in Illinois, most people don't realize that you kind of just follow along with whatever you want to do. Pritzker, he's getting his money, he's doing his thing. He doesn't care about us. And we just kind of live our lives and really pretty well unimpeded. That wasn't happening for me in Missouri. I can't say I was living my life unimpeded with Sam Page in charge and some of these other folks. You don't see that in Illinois. We didn't have the lockdowns. I didn't live in Illinois during the COVID times, but they didn't have the lockdowns in Illinois in the same way that they did in some parts of Missouri. And so I feel perfectly fine and safe here. Now, of course, I'm from the Chicago area, so Illinois is not all that foreign to me anyway. But what I was explaining to my friend yesterday when he called me, I'm like, part of the reason why I came here is because I had the opportunity to get 6 acres of land. And I really do feel like there's going to come a time in this country where you're not going to be able to get acreage. And if you have land, you really need to hold on to it. If you don't have land, you really need to get out and you need to buy some, because I really think that there's a shadow government out there. We all know they exist, and they are working double time to make sure that if they can't get Trump out of office early, that once it comes up for a reelection, that they win. And if they don't win that time, they're going to win the next time. But at some point, they're going to get back into power. And when they do, it's going to be devastation like we've not seen before, because they're not going to let us get the edge up again. That's just not going to happen. And if you look at my friend Kasha. One of these days I'm going to have her come on the show. She came on to my old show and she said she's willing to come here. I've been so busy, I haven't had time to catch up to her. But like she said, she lived in communist Poland. You don't own land there. You don't own your own home. The government leases your home and your land to you for a certain period of years. And then, you know what? It's not yours. You don't own it. And the government controls your land and your home because you don't own your land and your home. And we are very quickly moving into that Marxist socialist type of system. And I really do think with all of these companies like BlackRock, and BlackRock owns a lot of different companies. We think of BlackRock and you think, well, I don't see BlackRock buying homes in my neighborhood. That's because they work under a lot of different subsidiaries. So I'm not going to go down those names. I don't want to get sued. But if you go and you look at some of the real estate listings, some of the rentals, you'll know who they are. And what they're doing, of course, they're buying homes, they're buying land, they're buying everything they can. Why? Because at some point down the road, the government and companies like BlackRock, it's going to be very corporate. They're going to own everything. There's going to be nothing left for you to have. And so I made sure that I got property with a fresh water stream. I have a natural spring here on the property, a well, fruit trees. I planted the fruit trees, but I already had nut trees. And I think we've got to start getting prepared for this to happen. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of when, not if, it's a matter of when. And so Robert says, honestly, we don't own our own houses either. Well, you're right, Robert. And you'll never own your own house to some degree. Now, hopefully that will change if Trump starts eliminating some of these different taxation systems that we have. You'll at least feel like you own your home a little bit more. But as we know in the government, especially under Democrat rule, if they want to come and take your property, they're going to take it. We saw that with Hillary Clinton when she was Secretary of State running the Bureau of Land Management. Remember the Malheur Reservation, the Bundys, we've got Ruby Ridge, we've got all these different situations that when the government wants your land, they just come in and they just take it. As a matter of fact, I'm kind of worried about that because, as you know, hopefully that wouldn't happen under the Trump administration. But as you know, we've got some planes flying over and mapping out the entirety of the Midwest, particularly around the Ozark region and some other areas. And they're trying to find natural resources, rare minerals, rare earth minerals. And then what are they going to do if they find rare earth minerals on your property? Then what? I don't know about you, but when we signed off the papers for the house I'm in now, it said it does not come with mining rights. You cannot mine your own land. You don't have any right to drill oil. You don't have any right to, excavate and mine for minerals. Those rights are not yours. So you own the surface of your property, right? And maybe your house above it if they don't tax the heck out of you. But yeah, ownership is not what we would like it to be and what it should be. That is for sure. And I think that's just going to change for the worst as we go. I really do. I think it's just going to change for the worst as we go. So some of the other things that I wanted to talk about really quick before we make a run for it. Kevin says foreign governments are buying up America. They've been selling us out since the 60s. And then Kevin, that other story I've been hearing, I haven't had time to research it, where they're talking about China having American children through some type of sperm donation program. They're fathering all these American children, like hundreds of American children, so that they can have, some type of stake in America. I haven't fully researched that yet. It sounded really weird and kind of creepy, but it is a thing. It is a thing that you can look it up yourself. Now something else I want to talk about real quick. Again, we talked about the core five, right? Well, and again, I said there's no I for Israel in the core five. Wait, Robert says, how high above your property do we own air rights? Right, Robert? And really, I don't know. There is a limit to the air rights that you own. I can't recall what those limits are. If you buy a drone or operate a drone, you'll know, because you have to get a special permit to operate your drone so far up in the air, even over your own home. And I don't know if that's in all areas or just some areas. So you own a bubble. How about that? You own a bubble that contains your home in your living area. But as long as you don't mine it, you're not looking for oil, drilling for oil. Because I thought about that. My house actually sits on top of an area that used to be a mine. I've tried to look at the old records. I don't have the faintest clue what they were mining for. But I know I do find iron ore and some different elements. We have a creek that runs through, which is part of that natural spring. There's, I think, 8 springs in this area, and I think a couple of them are on my property. I found one. I don't know where the others are. I really, honestly, I've never even been out past the wood line in one area. I have never even been on like 2 acres of the property. I know people probably don't believe this. I am so busy that I don't have even 10 minutes to run outside and walk across the little bridge that goes across the creek and go on the other side. I just don't have time. I've stood at the edge and I've looked over there, but I've never actually been over there. I need to do that to see what's going on over there. Maybe I'll start mining for gold or something. But anyway, let's see. Kevin says, look what they're doing to property owners in New York. They're trying to give first right of refusal to the city for nonprofits while they condemn your property. Yeah, communist stuff. That's exactly right, Kevin. And get used to saying that, because at some point it's going to happen, and we all better be prepared before it does happen, because it is going to happen. And speaking of land, like I said, no I for Israel in the core five. And what I'm understanding is that Netanyahu has really delivered a big blow to Donald Trump. And I haven't yet seen, I just found out about this morning. I'm not sure yet how Donald Trump is reacting to this news, but it is true that the Trump administration wants to turn the Gaza into a resort area. I used to joke about it. Remember, I have a video of it somewhere. I'll have to find that video, called what was it called? The Trump Riviera or something like that, where he was going to turn it into condos and resorts and things, because Gaza, parts of that area are absolutely beautiful. They have a beautiful coastline. But it was a joke. I thought it was a joke anyway, but I guess it's not a joke. The Trump administration does actually want to develop the area in Gaza. They do want it to turn it into a tourist type area in some parts. Well, Israel kind of delivered a big blow to Donald Trump, because this kind of goes against Trump's plan. He has a vision for what Gaza should be. Now, personally, I don't think we have any right saying what's going on in Gaza. I don't think Israel has any right saying what's going on in Gaza. If there's going to be a Riviera, it should be the Gazan Riviera. Those people should be able to do what they want with their own land. But that's just my opinion, and I know I'm fairly isolated in that opinion. But now Israel has announced that they have taken a look at the Gaza region, and they have identified 19 different areas where they're going to create a settlement. So they're going to expand Israel into these 19 different areas. And that is completely against the peace agreement that was made. When Israel signed off on this peace agreement, it said there will be no further settlement in the Gaza region. Now they've identified 19 areas in which they're going to create a settlement. And that is absolutely 100% against the peace deal. And I have not heard yet Donald Trump's reaction. I'm sure we will hear it soon enough. He's not going to be happy. And let's see, Jay Van Brown, Southern Illinois is oil country. Used to be a lot of mines. Yeah, I've seen some oil rigs in different areas when I'm driving to different places. Especially out in the country, we take these old country roads. In my area, I don't know. The water table is very close. I think I've told you guys before. I haven't seen them lately. I don't know what happened and why. I feel like there's a change going on here on my property that I don't quite understand and don't really know who to ask. But when I moved here, there were little crawfish, crawdad, crayfish, whatever you want to call them, holes all over the yard. And especially out where I garden, you'd see, they kick up mud and you'd see these big stacks of mud where they've been. Well, my son and my brother took a boroscope. If you know what a boroscope is, it's a line with a little camera at the end. And they put it down, in one of these holes. Well, I mean, I would say maybe 3 feet down from where my garden is, underneath there was nothing but a table of water. It was nothing but water. They put the camera down into the water, just 3 feet down, which kind of scared me when I was gardening. I'm like, man, how deep is that water? What's below me? It kind of creeped me out a little bit. And then we started seeing all of a sudden these crawfish holes popping up in the front yard. And I'm thinking, okay, is the water expanding underneath? That all of a sudden now I've got, crawfish holes popping up in the front yard. They were back by the creek before, but now they're up in the front yard. It was kind of freaking me out a little bit, quite honestly. And then all of a sudden they all just disappeared. They've probably been here forever. And then at the latter part of this past summer, I didn't see any. It's like they were just gone. I don't know what happened to them. I don't know where they went. I don't know why they're not there anymore. I did not have my son put the boroscope back down into the ground to look, although I probably need to do that when it gets warm enough to do so. But it is kind of strange. But I do know that there was mining that took place here. I don't know what kind of mining. I don't think it was a situation where it created maybe a mine shaft, but there's so much water under there. I don't know how they could get down there to mine for anything, quite honestly. I really have no idea. But I do find a lot of interesting rocks. And somewhere on my property, there's an old trash dump from way back when, is what I'm guessing, because every time it rains really hard and the creek overflows and there's that big rush of water, it washes up all these old bottles and little pieces of old pottery and little chips of old plates and different kinds of things. And so every time it rains really hard, I always run down there as soon as the water recedes to see what it brought up. And I found a lot of interesting old medicine bottles and different things from the early 1800s, which I personally find to be quite fascinating. All right, guys, I'm going to talk your head off today. We're going to talk tomorrow. I will be here tomorrow, Christmas Eve. It's hard to believe it's already Christmas Eve. I'm going to be here tomorrow because we're going to talk about the threat that's taking place. I don't want to scare anyone. That's not my goal. I don't want to put fear in anyone. But I think that there's enough chatter, there's enough talk, amongst a lot of law enforcement officials, a lot of people in the government, that they are absolutely expecting multiple terror attacks to take place in the United States around various Christian or Jewish festivities. And I don't know where, I don't know the specifics. I'm trying to find out. I've been asking, as much as I could. I might talk to Colonel Joe Adams and see if he wants to talk about it too. But I'm not kidding you. This is a real legitimate threat. And it's kind of crazy. You don't really know where to go with it. You don't want to scare people. Clearly you don't want to fall under the spell of the terrorism, which is what they want you to do, and then just stay home and not go to any festivities. But there's countless videos of people going around tearing down people's Christmas decorations. I saw videos of people delivering pizzas, tearing people's Christmas decorations down because it goes against their religious beliefs. And I really do think that there's so much hatred going on in this country right now, so much division, and so much emphasis right now put on people who are here in our country illegally, and so much emphasis put on the Islamic faith and the radicalism, that we're seeing taking place. That I think it's going to lead to some serious consequences and actions from these different groups of people. Now, I can't guarantee you these things are going to happen. I can't say I know for sure that we're going to have a terror attack, but I can tell you one thing, that there's a lot of people in law enforcement right now who say it is absolutely going to happen, and it's not going to happen just once. It's going to happen in a multitude of areas. That there's a lot of talk going on right now. A lot of these plans are, they're working overtime to try to foil these plans, but they can't catch them all, unfortunately. So what does that mean to you? Does that mean you shouldn't go anywhere? Where there's a Christmas festivity taking place? I don't know. Because, quite honestly, when I started really thinking about it, some of the information I'm being told, which is very limited, by the way, nobody's going to give me all the information because I know I'm going to run on the show and talk about it. But they never said a Christmas festival or Christmas, they said somewhere. And is that going to be the hospital attacks we know about? What shopping, where is it going to be? I don't know. We already know that these terror groups have already purchased uniforms for hospital uniforms, various professions within the hospital, uniforms for military officers, uniforms for police officers. And we've already talked about that two-part attack where the first attack's going to occur, then there's going to be a terrorist in a police uniform or some position of authority, and they're going to direct everybody to a second location where the second attack occurs. I don't know. I don't know. I just don't know. But what I am told is it is going to happen. It is going to happen. I don't know where. I don't know what city. I don't know what kind of venue this is going to be, but it is going to happen, and it's terrifying to me. So I'm not still trying to get as much information as I can. I'm going to touch base with Colonel Adams today and see if he's found out anything. And I'm gonna try to tell you guys tomorrow as much as I can possibly find out, as much as I know. And I don't know if I'll be told anything, but I'm gonna do my best to find out. Jay says was pretty common for settlers to discard trash in creeks. I wondered about that, Jay. And right part of the upper part of the land here is where two creeks kind of come together. And I've not yet figured out where this where the trash is coming from. I'm guessing that it must be maybe buried somewhere, and the water rushing through is taking it off the banks. I've not walked up the creek. There's a couple of trees that have come down over it, and I've been trying to get my brother and my son out with a chainsaw to cut those trees up so that we can walk down through there. But like I said, I know you guys probably think that's crazy to think that I don't have enough time to do that, but I really don't. I know my brother told me where he thinks the water's coming out at, because it's real wet and mushy, and your feet kind of sink in. So I walked back there once, and I can tell, I don't know what it is. I'll have to take a picture and show you guys when I make my way back there. Maybe tomorrow. It's going to be, or well, no, it's Christmas Day. Tomorrow's going to be a very busy day, but Christmas Day, I think it's going to be 70 something, record breaking temperatures. I think I'll walk out there and I'm gonna take a picture of some of the stuff I see and show you guys, because there is like something, it looks like an old building that kind of fell apart, and there's an old chimney back there. I don't know what it's for. It's not, doesn't look like a house chimney, but I'm going to show you guys. I wonder if maybe it's an old pump or something, pump house. We'll find out. All right, guys, I don't want to keep you any longer. It's already 9:30. Jay says, might be valuable bottles in there. There could be. I found some pretty neat intact medicine bottles. I don't know where they're at. Maybe I can find them today and show those to you guys tomorrow. But I'm going to look for them. All right, guys, that's it for me today. I will not keep you any longer. I've got to run. I actually do still have work to do today. And I will be back tomorrow. We're going to talk about some Christmassy things. We're going to talk about some terror, the potential for terror attacks over the coming days. That's going to be between tomorrow, Christmas Eve, and probably New Year's Day is when we're going to see these plots come to fruition. I hope not. Oh, you collect fruit jars. I've not found any kind of fruit jars. I wish I did. I have found some at auctions and so on, but not yet here on the property. But I've never looked on the property. They're probably here somewhere. I just don't know where to look. All right, guys, I will see you all tomorrow. I'm Tabitha Hassell with Tabs on Tap. I hope you have a really fantastic day and enjoy this beautiful weather, because we only got a couple days left of it, and I will talk to you later. Have a good day, everybody.